So welcome to our virtual small talk presentation this evening. Small Talk Tuesday is a casual, lively discussion with the Transcona Museum curators on topics related to the museum and the community of Transcona. And we are excited to bring these to you virtually right now. The museum has reopened to the public, so we will only be doing the evening talks for the rest of the month of June. And then in July and August, we will be going back to just be doing them on Tuesday afternoons, but we will be recording them and getting them onto YouTube very soon after. So we're just not able to do the evening ones as much anymore, but they'll be available on YouTube for you to view them. Thank you for joining us. You are muted and your video has been turned off. So please use the chat function to send us any messages or communicate with us during the presentation. I've already sent a couple messages as we've gotten started. The chat function can be found in the meeting controls on the bottom of your screen, or if you're on an iPad or an iPhone, you just swipe, I believe, to the left or the right, and your chat functions are there, or a little notification comes up and you click on it. Feel free to ask questions throughout the talk. We will get to as many as we can. If you post anything inappropriate, you will be removed from the meeting. You can leave the meeting at any time. However, we may lock it after about 20 minutes, so you might not be able to rejoin. And then at the end, we will be doing a live Q&A. So again, we ask that you use the chat function for the questions if we aren't able to get to the ones you asked previously, or if you have new questions. Jennifer will be leading the talk this evening, and I will be monitoring the chat and the sort of back end of things as we're doing this evening, but I'll be jumping in as well. Oh, and I'm Alana. I'm the curator at the Transcona Museum, and Jennifer is the assistant curator.
Hello. So welcome everyone. Tonight's small talk will be on the communities that time forgot, specifically those communities of Montavista and Suthwyn, which were two settler communities that existed in and around the Transcona area before Transcona was established. And before we begin, just a brief acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation. So Communities That Time Forgot is based off of a blog series that I started a few years ago. It is an ongoing blog series that highlights other communities and villages that existed in the Springfield area before and were concurrent with the establishment of Transcona in 1912. In the series, there are a few communities that I've talked about. So the first one was Montavista, which was published in June of 2017. Then Suthwyn, which I published in November 2017. North Transcona, May 2018. South Transcona, which was published on February 2019. And then Springfield, which will be an upcoming talk for later this year. So there is a lot of research that goes into each community story, and I use both primary and secondary sources. So in the past, my primary sources have come from the Transcona Museum and Archives, Library and Archives Canada, Manitoba, digital resources on Manitoba history. Manitoba is no longer its own separate website. It is now hosted through the University of Manitoba, so all that information is still available. It's just now through the University of Manitoba. Some of my digital sources are from the secondary sources are from the Manitoba Historical Society, Historic Sites of Manitoba, the book Springfield, First Rural Municipality in Manitoba, and Transcona's Jubilee books, to name a few. Any other sources that I failed to mention have been cited in the blog series themselves, so they are there for anyone who is interested to see where I'm getting my research from. So there are two distinct Gunn families that lived in both Montavista and Suthwyn that pop up in our research time and again. So there's the Gunn family of North Transcona, and they are descendants of Selkirk settlers who resided in the North Transcona area since 1877. One prominent member of this family is John William Gunn, who lived from 1865 to 1946, and he married Annie Stevenson, and together they had 6 daughters. He is commemorated by John W. Gunn Middle School, and he donated land for the construction of Central School in Transcona, and he also served as a member of the inaugural municipal council for the town of Transcona for about 20 years. The other Gunn family is the Gunn family of North Kildare. They're from Sutherland Shire in Scotland, and the family's patriarch, John Gunn, resided in the parish of Kildonan, and he is commemorated by Gunn Road. Robert Gunn, a prominent member of that family, lived from 1842 to 1922. He married an Anne Sutherland and together had 10 children, including John William Gunn. He inherited the family farmstead and worked there until about 1870. He then moved to the area north of present-day Kildare Avenue in Transcona, and he served as postmaster for Montavista, a school board trustee, and was a part of municipal council. John William Gunn, his son, lived from 1870 to 1936, and he married Ava Sutherland, and he resided in Suthwyn.
Yes, and both John W. Gunns were alive at the same time, and we really discovered them when we were looking at a phone book from, I believe it's like the 1920s, and there was, in Transcona, there was a phone number for a John W. Gunn, and in Suthwyn, on the same page, or the page just right beside it, there was a phone number for John W. Gunn, and we were very confused, and so we, as we put it, we fell down the rabbit hole and into this big bunch of research that just came about because of phone numbers, which was really quite fun. These sort of research things that we do are very fun and enjoyable for us.
But if I remember correctly, we also discovered that one of the history books did confuse them as well.
Yes, in the book, From Slate to Computer, they had taken John Gunn from Suthwyn and had some of his history mixed into John Gunn, North Transcona, the school named after him. And so it was actually, and some of that information was incorrect in the Springfield book. So we went to, I believe it was an obituary that we found from the actual paper, or it was John Gunn, his retirement or something like that, that listed his biography and everything. So we had to go back many sources to clear the information.
So we have figured out the Gunn family. So they will pop up in our talk tonight, but just our clarification, your clarification. So we're all good. So we're first going to start talking about Montavista, as it was the first settler community that appeared prior to Suthwyn. So Montavista itself existed, as far as I can tell, from about the 1870s to the early 1900s, and it first appears on the Manitoba map in 1889. The name appears to come from the Latin meaning mountain view, perhaps so named because Bird's Hill is visible to the northwest. It was located about 5 miles northeast of Winnipeg in what is now considered to be North Transcona. And the hub of this community seems to have been centered around the Kildare-Redonda area of Transcona. So I have an early map here from 1889. And you can see here Montavista on the map, as well as Suthwyn, just a little further to the south and east. And then this is just a map that I've created myself, showing, as far as I can tell, the boundaries of Montavista, and this being the approximation of where the post office was located, and then the locations of the Montavista School. Some notable people, Robert Gunn. He was postmaster and South Springfield School District trustee. He farmed about 320 acres in the area from 1878 to 1907, and he is commemorated by Gunn Road. John W. Gunn and family. He was a South Springfield School District trustee for about 40 years, commemorated by the John W. Gunn Middle School. And John A. Matheson, he operated the first steam threshing outfit in the area and assisted in the development of the Transcona shops. So this is a picture here of the Gunn family of North Transcona. Another photograph here of the family. So Montavista School number 39, it was originally registered as the South Springfield School in 1879 at the first public school meeting of the South Springfield School District. A log schoolhouse was built near the residence of Robert Gunn, where the beach track crosses the Gunn Road. The first teacher appointed was Miss Maggie Patterson, and her class enrollment was 17 boys and 8 girls, and her pay was $40 per month. The school was initially rented to the district until it was purchased from Mr. Gunn in 1882, and the school will be relocated to the southeast corner of Gunn Road and Day Street. A new schoolhouse was built in 1893 by the McCormick brothers at a cost of about $700. The old building was sold for $300. Following the founding of the town of Transcona in 1912, and after the construction of Central School that same year, the district was renamed in 1913 to the Transcona School District. Montavista School would be renamed to the North School, and it would be referred to as the North Transcona School by many people in the community. This would cause considerable confusion, however, because there is another school in the adjacent North Springfield School District that also had a North Transcona school. Instruction went up to grade 8 and was continued until 1921. An 8-foot expansion was added to accommodate new students, and instruction was capped to grade 6. Within a few years, the school was only able to provide instruction for grades 1 to 3. The last teacher to have charge of the school was Miss Mildred Hammond, who together with about 30 students were transferred to Central School in January of 1935. The building itself was sold to a local resident who used it as a tool shed, and the South Springfield School name would later be reintroduced in the South Springfield School District, and this would be the South Springfield School located in South Transcona.
So not at all confusing when you're talking about one school and it has 3 different names. The South Springfield School, the North Transcona School, the North School, which has also made some of the research a bit complicated, or, you know, it took a little bit to figure out what school they were actually referring to.
Yeah, because there's a North Springfield School District, a South Springfield School District, and a Springfield School District, all within kind of the same area. Mm-hmm. So, you know, super not confusing. We don't have much in terms of photographs of the Montavista School, but we do have a model of the school that is actually in the Transcona Museum collections. So best reference that we have. So the Montavista Post Office, it was first opened in 1888 on property owned by Robert Gunn. It operated out of his home, and he would also serve as the postmaster for Montavista until his resignation in 1897. The post office would officially close a year later in April 1898. And some community events that happened in Montavista. In March of 1896, the Montavista football team had successful match wins against the North Springfield and Dugald teams. According to the newspaper article, the young men of Montavista were preparing to organize a football team, and when organized, would be open to play all comers. There were concert evenings under the auspices of the United Order of Scotchmen that were held at the Montavista School. And in 1894, the Montavista School was to house, in rotation, the Patrons of Industry, a farmers' organization, until the group had established their own permanent lodge. The settlement itself disappears from the historical record around 1900 and last appears on the Manitoba map in 1903. By 1907, the survey for Transcona was complete, and the following year, the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway broke ground at the Transcona shops. What would remain of Montavista would later be absorbed into the new community of Transcona. And a map from 1903, so the last appearance of Montavista on the Manitoba maps. And so now on to the community of Suthwyn. Suthwyn was in existence from about the 1880s until the 1960s, and it first appears on the Manitoba map in 1889. It was a farming community whose residents were of English or Scottish descent, with some families being second or third generation of the Red River Colony or Selkirk settlement, going back as far as the 1810s. It was located east of Winnipeg and occupied a rather large district southeast of Transcona. The name Suthwyn was selected in 1887 when Donald Sutherland sought to establish a post office in his home to be called Sutherland. That was to be the name of the community. There was already a Sutherland in Saskatchewan, so the name was changed to Suthwyn. Other spellings I found are Suthwyn with an I or Southwyn.
Which is interesting because when I lived in Saskatoon, the area of Saskatoon that I lived in was the Sutherland area. So I wonder if that had originally actually been that Sutherland area and was absorbed into Saskatoon.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out if that's where Sutherland was.
Mm-hmm. So this map here is from 1889, and so the first appearance of Suthwyn on the map here. And this map here is one I created, so you can see the boundaries itself of Suthwyn. It's rather large. It's been cut off, but Deacon's Corner, if you can see my mouse, is just right down here. And then this is the entrance into Transcona from the perimeter. So quite a big area. And then there's the southeast corner of Transcona itself and the Transcona Cemetery. So this map just showing locations for the post offices, the cemetery, Suthwyn School, the church, and some other sites that we'll be talking about in this presentation.
Yeah, like the dairy.
Yes. Oh, and a closer view of this. So Transcona Cemetery here, Dugald Road, the perimeter, so Suthwyn Dairy here, locations of the post office, the school down here, an historic house, and then the Suthwyn Better Times Club. So this is the Van Slyck home. It was originally located in Suthwyn, and it is listed on Historic Sites of Manitoba, and it is now located in the community of Dugald. Some notable folks from Suthwyn: Donald Sutherland, postmaster and founder of Suthwyn. John William Gunn and family. His father was the postmaster for Montavista, and he farmed 240 acres in the area beginning in 1895. Remy Clays, who owned the Suthwyn Dairy, which served about 200 daily customers. And Peter K. Dixon, postmaster, school trustee, and owner of Dixon Estate. And his property became the Suthwyn Presbyterian Church and the Transcona Cemetery. A photograph here of Suthwyn Dairy, which was owned and operated by Remy Clays. And then this is a write-up of the Suthwyn Dairy, which appears in the Transcona Silver Jubilee of 1936. So just discussing Remy Place himself, that large barn, which is no longer in existence, was built in 1922. So our first building is Suthwyn School number 530. The Suthwyn School District was organized in 1887, and a new school was built the following year along Suthwyn Road. The school was a blessing for many families, as their children had to walk across fields and swamps to get to the Montavista School. It was a one-room schoolhouse, and the first teacher appointed was Miss Phoebe Collins, and her class consisted of 9 students. By 1920, the schoolhouse was in desperate need of repair. So at first, students attended the Springfield School in South Transcona for 2 years, and then they were transferred to the Oak Hammock School for another 2 years. So repairs were finished by 1924. However, by 1934, a decision was made to build a new and larger schoolhouse on the original site, and 40 students now attended the school. The new building even had a full-size basement, and when completed, there was a reunion of former pupils and teachers. For a brief time in the 30s, a mission band was given permission to hold weekly meetings at the school, but this was discontinued when a parent thought that the school was no place for religion. In 1953, a 3-room cottage was purchased for about $1,500 to be used for a teacherage. Previously, for a 5-year period, 1 female teacher resided in the school and used the boys' cloakroom for a bedroom. The Suthwyn School and property was later expropriated in 1960 for the purpose of constructing the Red River floodway. The schoolhouse was resold twice that year, and the third buyer moved the building to Copeland Street in South Transcona. The teacherage itself was sold and moved to Lake Winnipeg for use as a summer cottage. The school district was dissolved in 1964 and later became part of the former Transcona Springfield School Division. So an image here of the Suthwyn School, the very first building that was built. And then the school, the second school they built post-1934, so much larger, and you can see windows leading into that full-size basement. A great photograph from 1935 of the school children attending class.
And the school desks that we have in our collection look very similar to those school desks in that school.
Very similar. Another photo from 1940, school teacher and her class.
Now, Jen, wasn't it the last time we did this presentation that one of the participants who was listening with her mother, and her mother is in one of these photos because she attended that school? Is it this one, or was it an interior shot?
No, I'm fairly certain it was this image, and she would have been one of these 2 girls at the back here.
Which is just amazing that someone who attended our previous talk that we did on this went to the school.
Yeah, that was a really great moment. And then this is no date to this photograph, but a group of children with their bikes outside the school. And then the school and teacherage, so that's the teacherage right here, post-1953. So the Suthwyn Better Times Club, it was organized in 1931, and the club met every Friday night at the schoolhouse. The club organized a variety of social evenings, including dances, pie socials, box socials, whisk drives, and costume parties. And in winter, attendance was always at its highest. An apple box, which was operated by the Peterson brothers, was often used to deliver people to and from the social festivities. And in 1934, this old Suthwyn schoolhouse was purchased by the club. And over the next few years, the club would flourish and played a large part in the developing a community spirit in Suthwyn. An open-air dance floor was later constructed, but attendance slowly diminished as many individuals would leave the community, and the clubhouse remained vacant until 1937, when Fred Van Slyck purchased the building. He moved it a half-mile south, where it was remodeled, and where he remodeled the building several times. So this is a photograph of Menial Pearson with his Apple box. And so that would deliver individuals to and from the club. The Suthwyn Post Office. It first opened in 1887 on property owned by Donald Sutherland. It operated out of his home, and he would also serve as postmaster for Suthwyn until his resignation in 1892. The post office was then moved into the home of Peter K. Dixon, where it remained until 1900. From 1906 to 1907, the post office was kept in the home of Mrs. A. McIntyre until her resignation, and then the office would close officially in March of 1909. The Suthwyn Presbyterian Church. During the summer of 1900, Postmaster Peter K. Dixon donated a 1-acre section of his property for the future site of the Suthwyn Presbyterian Church. Previously, residents traveled many miles to attend the Kildonan Presbyterian Church and the Springfield Presbyterian Church. The church that was built on site was a stately building of solid brick with a 60-foot tower over the front entrance, and it was officially opened in December of 1900. The cost of the church contract was about $3,500, was met in less than 4 years, largely due to the efforts of the good cooks, and they would hold pie socials, ice cream socials, and oyster suppers to help raise funds to offset the building construction. In 1910, a preaching station was established near the Transcona shops. A congregation was organized for the new town of Transcona, and meetings were held in the tent, which later blew down in a heavy wind. The Suthwyn Choir was invited to take part in the opening service at the Transcona shops, and that would have been 1913. By 1912, the church membership had declined, most likely due to the establishment of Transcona. Services were discontinued by 1916, and the building was sold to the town of Transcona for $600. The few remaining members met for service in the Springfield School in South Transcona until 1925, when the Methodist Church from Dougal was purchased and moved to the area. The congregation later joined the United Church of Canada in 1925, becoming the Suthwyn United Church. Once again, dwindling membership forced the church to be closed, and the building was sold and moved away. And in 1938, the congregation of Suthwyn joined the Knox United Church of Transcona, and the Suthwyn Church was officially closed. One of the only images we have of the original Suthwyn Presbyterian Church, and this comes from the Springfield First Rural Municipality book. So the Transcona Cemetery. In March 1914, the town of Transcona purchased 38.9 acres of land in the southeast corner of the town site, with the exception of the 1-acre property on which the Suthwyn Presbyterian Church stood. Town council had planned to use the property surrounding the church as a cemetery, and by July 1914, the Transcona Cemetery was opened. In 1932, it was decided that the former Suthwyn Presbyterian Church would be dismantled, and the church's bricks were used by W.A. Girling to construct the mortuary, which still stands in the church today.
And W.A. Girling also built the Transcona post office.
Yes. So there's a photograph of the Transcona Cemetery mortuary, which, as I mentioned, is still standing. So there were some other proposed developments in Suthwyn. During the land boom of 1907-1908, the Dixon Estate was developed with lots planned around the Transcona Cemetery. In 1914, a syndicate of 6 men purchased about 240 acres for $24,000 and named it the Rockefeller Gardens, which housed 215 lots in total. The investment, unfortunately, was lost, with many of the lots reverting back to farmland.
And wasn't it also during our previous presentation that the woman who was in the school photo remembers someone coming to her house asking where the lot was that they had purchased from either the Dixon estates or the other estates?
Yeah, I do remember that. So this is what the proposed Dixon estate was to look like. So this comes from the property registry for the province of Manitoba. So this here is the Transcona Cemetery. That right here is the church, and so then this would have been the development, all told. Today, very little land changed hands in the Suthwyn community until 1907, when the survey for the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway and the site for the town of Transcona went through. Many farms located in the area were later purchased and subdivided into town lots, and some properties were bought and sold many times by speculators. In the 50s and 60s, the construction of both the Red River Floodway and the Perimeter Highway cut the Suthwyn district directly in half, blocking almost every mile road with the exception of Dugald Road. And this would completely remove many of the original homesteads as well as the original site of the Suthwyn School. And the last time Suthwyn appears on the map is 1909, and there it is right here.
We will now start the live question and answer portion. So use the chat function below to ask any question that you may have, or to share any story on Montavista or Suthwyn that you may have. If you think of a question later, that's okay. You can always message us or email us. These videos will also be going up on YouTube, so you can always leave a question or a story in the comments section there. Thank you again for joining us this evening. As a reminder, there are many ways in which you can support the Transcona Museum during this time. You can consider making a donation to the museum or the Transcona Museum Endowment Fund. You can do this through our website or through Canada Helps or the Winnipeg Foundation. You can become a museum member if you're not already. You can also support us by staying in touch. So you can visit our website at www.transconamuseum.mb.ca. You can follow us on social media. We are active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We have our blog series through our website. We're also on Reddit now. You can join our mailing list. We send out monthly e-newsletters with updates and events and what's going on at the museum monthly. So we won't spam your inbox. So you can sign up through our website.
So thank you for joining us this evening and coming out to our presentations. And we hope to see you again.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.